Welcome back to Taiwan Outlook. Our guest today is the chairman of the Taiwan New Century Foundation, Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen, we've been talking about Taiwan's efforts to join the UN. Apparently, Taiwan cannot get into the UN with only our efforts. We need international support. So look at the trend. Do you think we are getting more international support in this issue?
I think in a way, yes. We have just begun to fight this year, in a way, and in the past. And when you take the correct approach to it, that would make all the difference, as we can see in terms of the enthusiasm that has been generated, and then in terms of the impact. And so I think in terms of what we need to do, I said we need an all-out effort. We need an effort that is able to mobilize all the people of Taiwan, and also not only a nationwide effort, but also a global effort. We have both domestic and international dimensions to be concerned with. And in that sense, we need to mobilize all the governmental part, what government can do in terms of having the correct policy, and from the president down to different departments and so on, and with all the personnel in diplomatic or other capacities abroad, they need to redouble their effort. And when there is a very clear governmental policy, all these governmental officials in different levels can support it. And in the meantime, the people of Taiwan need to work very closely together with the government. Now government does what the government can do best, and the people can support this whole enterprise in a manner how the people in a democratic society can do, and two really working very closely together. And in terms of the people, I'm talking about, today we talk about within a society, the governmental sectors, business sector, and the civil society sector. They need to work together very closely. And in the case of Taiwanese people, it's very fortunate, not only Taiwanese inside the in Taiwan, but so many Taiwanese abroad, in the United States, other part of North America, and other part of the world. All these are very important assets. We do need to make sure all those people are well mobilized. So I always believe God helps those help themselves.
That's right.
The Taiwanese government and people must do what they can. I said, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If we are for myself only, what am I? If not now, when? And in that sense, we said, yes, we want to demonstrate to the world that Taiwanese people and government are doing our utmost, even though it's an uphill fight. But it's a just cause, it's the right thing to do. We shall persevere until we are successful. In the meantime, we do want to urge the members of the United Nations. The whole matter of a membership for Taiwan is a collective responsibility for the members of the United Nations. You must not say, let China dictate the outcome. Sometimes they said, why don't you go to talk to China? No, this is not a matter for China and Taiwan to talk. It's an application to all member states of the United Nations. The United Nations members must take their collective responsibility seriously. And when a collective decision is made within the framework of the United Nations, China cannot retaliate one country against another.
That's right.
And another important point, we said for those people who are adhering to the so-called one China policy, this is time for them to change to one Taiwan, one China. Yes, China exists, and there's only one China, but that one China does not include Taiwan. Taiwan is a sovereign, independent state. Taiwan means to maintain very friendly relations with China. And so in that sense, we do wish all member states of the United Nations change their policy. The one China policy really was the policy of a product of the Cold War. At the time of the rivalry between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong, Taiwanese people had nothing to do with the Chinese Civil War, and in those days, they were made those so-called one China policy did not take into account the real aspirations, wishes, grievances of the Taiwanese people. And the Taiwanese people now are saying to the world, Taiwan and China are two separate states.
Yeah.
The Taiwanese people are not Chinese. Taiwanese, Chinese are two separate countries. And so we wish all member states can take this collective decision of admitting Taiwan to the UN as a way to move from the outdated policy of one China.
That's right.
Collectively done, China cannot retaliate against them.
That's right.
And in the meantime, I think appeal to China. If Chinese leaders were really wise, they should support membership for Taiwan in the United Nations, for WHO, and so on.
That's right.
If they were able to do that, Taiwanese people would be so grateful to say, now here is somebody who is generous and wise enough, far-sighted enough. Taiwan has no reason to be antagonistic or hostile to China, provided they respect us, provided they respect our existence as a separate state, provided they respect our equality. And on the basis of mutual respect and equality, Taiwan and China can become really good neighbors. And in the long run, when we operate within the framework of freedom, democracy, human rights, and peace, would benefit all the people in China and Taiwan. And so in that sense, I'm very hopeful. But I think one reality is we do have to arouse the conscience of humankind, their sense of justice.
Yeah.
Don't just let the huge market of power politics sway the outcome.
Yeah.
So that now Taiwan's whole process of democratization can really be said to be a continuing process of challenging what appears to be impossible, like direct election of the president by the people, rotation of the ruling party, termination of a martial law, and so forth. All this simply give us, once we are able to focus our attention, do our utmost, and call attention to the world, yes, in the 21st century, there are enough decent human beings who really will be moved by our efforts and will be joined together, do what will be good, not only for Taiwan, but good for the United Nations, good indeed for all humanity.
Yeah. On the issue of a UN, apparently, as you said, that there should be a win-win situation for Taiwan and China. And unfortunately, China turns that into a zero-sum competition between Taiwan and China. But coming back to the issue of international support, apparently to make sure that our friends abroad understand and hear what we are trying to say, there should be a single voice from Taiwan. But do you think that there's a confusing signal sent by Taiwan society to the outside world? And also, look at the trend. Do you think Taiwan is more united or divided in terms of the issue of the UN?
Well, I think in terms of the current situation, especially we have the tyranny of legislature, or the violence of a majority there, certainly do give us the impression that the opposition for the sake of opposition seems to be the current affair of the status of affairs. But I think that needs to be changed. And I think that can be changed, for instance, when in the referendum for Taiwan's membership in the UN in the name of Taiwan gets such overwhelming support, then people realize, yes, on this, actually we are all in this together. When 77% of the people indicate they are in favor of application of UN membership in the name of Taiwan, and if that is demonstrated through a referendum, it itself can really convince even the people here, said, oh, we really are in this together. We really have a common ground, and for the best interest of the future of Taiwan, really we will have to realize this is new era. Yeah. And I think the way to do it, and this is why this referendum is so important. If you do demonstrate that in the most democratic way, that will convince our own people. And when the people of Taiwan are able to forge the necessary unity, then that will make all the difference in terms of a very clear voice. Yeah.
Apparently, that is a good chance for Taiwan to demonstrate to the world as a united country that we want to join the UN under the name of Taiwan. But unfortunately, these issues are quite politicized in Taiwan, and it becomes a very partisan issue. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the prospect of this referendum?
I think I'm optimistic, but we do have to work our utmost. And this is why, like, there's this relay by the torch, for instance, or the 9/11 rally and so forth. All these do show signs. More and more people realize that UN membership is so important to Taiwan. They could go ahead and vote in that. One thing, of course, there is inherent difficulty. Taiwan has the most restrictive plebiscite law in the world, in the sense requiring the passage of the referendum will require half of eligible voters voting in favor.
Yeah.
It's not in terms of half of the people go to the polls and a majority vote in favor.
Yeah.
This high hurdle really is unprecedented in the history of the world.
Yeah.
But still, even though it's a very, very difficult task, I think it can be done. And this is why, for instance, on the part of the alliance, we believe this goal of having 2 million people have their signature in support of the referendum at this stage would be very crucial.
That's right.
Once we are able to mobilize that, more than 1 million that is required in a normal situation, it is a sort of a demonstration.
But the reason why many countries are concerned about the referendum is because China has said repeatedly that they will react if Taiwan passed this referendum. What do you think China will react in the future?
Well, China has said that again and again since Taiwan has the first democratic presidential election in 1996. And at that time they did fire many of the missiles. But I think the Taiwanese people were not intimidated. And in 2000, you know, when DPP's president Chen was elected, at that time during the campaign, they said if you elect him, that means war. Nothing happens. And I think it's an important thing when this is why all those undemocratic communist dictatorship is so afraid of democracy. And for Taiwan, democracy, these universal values of freedom, democracy, and human rights is what we have. And we are on the side of the history. We are with that. And that's why you need to go through this democratic process to demonstrate through this process, yes, we are a free democratic country, and here is the will of the people. And in today's world, the will of the 23 million people that is democratically, peacefully, unmistakably expressed does count a great deal. And so that's my conviction. I think we do need to do it in a way to convince ourselves and also convince the world. So a successful referendum will have a very positive impact, both internally and externally.
So finally, do you think that at the end of the day, if Taiwan passed the referendum, Beijing has no way but to come to the terms of the reality that Taiwan has made one more step forward?
I think what we have really, Taiwan has been saying Taiwan has been a sovereign independent state. And Taiwan and China really have no jurisdiction or control over each other. And when Taiwan is able to go through that process, through a referendum to accompany the application for UN membership, that is a giant step forward. And I'm sure when that referendum is being taken and so on, the world press will come to Taiwan, and we definitely will be able to impress the world. This is what the people of Taiwan we want. As a fundamental rule of democracy, you do respect the choice, opinions of people. And this is what the democracy is about, what all the human rights talk, human rights movement is all about. And this is why, yes, for those of us who are able to enjoy democracy, we do have to cherish this hard-earned freedom and democracy and make sure this precious right of referendum be very wisely exercised.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Chen, for your insights, and thank you for coming to our program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Delighted to be here.
And thank you for watching Taiwan Outlook, and see you next time.